Samuel Johnson is Indignant. Stories by Lydia Davis. There's a tear up here. This is not part of the cover. That's my fault. This is a collection of short stories by Lydia Davis. It's put out by McSweeney's. For those of you who know McSweeney's, they put out a number of books. They have a magazine or two. So I have something interesting to say about this one. First of all, this is what the cover looks like in cloth. Samuel Johnson is Indignant. This is a series of short stories. Some of them are the kinds of short stories that you're familiar with. Some of them are literally one line, just one line. Some of them are, this is, very short. This is not the shortest short story in this collection, by the way. Some of them are more conventional. That's probably the shortest one. There's an entire sort of story that's just a question and answer session that doesn't have any of the questions. It just has the answers. And sometimes the answers are like, yes. Sometimes the answers, you can gather what the question is. She mentions Sojourner Truth. And then she sort of says, Sojourner Truth, the woman who was, anyway. So you can see that the question is like, wait, who's that? Can you repeat that? But there's something that I really want to mention, that I want to talk about today, which is a previous video that I made about this book, Iron and Silk, by Mark Salzman, about his nonfiction account, his memoir of when he went to China to study martial arts, and also he taught English while he was there. And I mentioned in the other video, I mentioned an anecdote in which one of his students turned in a paper or something that talked about a time when the student, went to Beijing and had some Peking duck, and it was so delicious. And then it turned out that actually he had never been to Beijing, but that his wife had told him this story so many times that he felt like he had actually been there. It turned out that, now that I've looked it up afterwards, it turned out that he was writing about his happiest moment. So he said, even though he's never been to Beijing, his wife went and had the duck. She tells me about it again and again, and I think, even though I was not there, it is my happiest moment. Okay. So why am I showing you this story from Iron and Silk when I have already done a video on Iron and Silk, and I've already even talked about that story? I didn't get all the details exactly right. Because one of Lydia Davis's short stories is Happiest Moment, which I will read to you. If you ask her what is a favorite story she has written, she will hesitate for a long time and then say it may be this story that she read in a book once. An English language teacher in China asked his Chinese student to say what was the happiest moment in his life. The student hesitated for a long time. At last he smiled with embarrassment and said that his wife had once gone to Beijing and eaten duck there, and she often told him about it, and he would have to say that the happiest moment of his life was her trip and the eating of the duck. So this is obviously coming from Iron and Silk, the Mark Salzman book. And there are some interesting moments in here because it's layered, right? The story about the man's happiest moment, where he hesitated before he told his happiest moment, was not a moment of his, it was his wife's. This is a favorite story that she has written, by the way. Of course, Lydia Davis is writing this, so that's one layer. And then about whoever this protagonist is, the favorite story she has written, she thinks of a story that someone else wrote, which is a Mark Salzman story. She hesitate for a long time and then say it may be the story she read, where this guy hesitated for a long time before telling his happiest moment. That's not exactly what happened. I don't think he hesitated for a long time. He wrote a paper. But anyway, that's not really the point. This is obviously coming from there. She doesn't mention Mark Salzman at all. I couldn't find him listed anywhere in this book, which maybe is okay. It's probably just fine. In any case, it's a good book on its own if you like short stories. She's very playful and has humor as well as some depth, and I can recommend it. Samuel Johnson is Indignant Stories by Lydia Davis. But don't forget, at least one of those comes from this book that I've already talked about. Okay.